Hillary Clinton said,
She's back.
There needs to be a formal deprogramming of the Trump cult members. Hillary Clinton called for the formal deprogramming of the Donald Trump MAGA supporters, characterizing them as a part of a cult. Maybe they don't like migrants. Maybe they don't like gay people or black people or the women who got the promotion. At work, they didn't. Clinton describes Trump as an authoritarian populist who connects with a portion of the Republican base on an emotional, psychological level. Can you go ahead and play this clip? Wonderful clip by Hillary.
Partisans in both parties in the past, and we had very bitter battles over all kinds of things, gun control and climate change and the economy and taxes. But there wasn't this little tail of extremism wagging the dog of the Republican Party as it is today. And sadly, so many of those extremists, those MAGA extremists, take their marching orders from Donald Trump, who has no credibility left by any measure. He's only in it for himself. He's now defending himself in civil actions and criminal actions. And when do they break with him? Because at some point, maybe there needs to be a formal deprogramming of the cult members, but something needs to happen. And
but here's the question, though. Here's the question I got for you. So the only reason CNN would put Hillary Clinton to give this insight is because they think their audience would react to it, right?
Yep.
You wouldn't bring a guest and give them, oh, yeah. And then like the host is laughing as if you're supportive of what she is saying. You only bring it because you think Democrats are still influenced by her. Does she still have that kind of influence over the Democratic voter?
I think the Democratic Party is a cult. I call it Blue Anon, and so that's exactly called. If you know about anything about Carl Jung, that's classic projection right there. Is what she's doing. She's talking about someone else being in a cult. No, they're the ones who are actually calling out the military-industrial complex. And right now, people like Matt Gaetz are calling out the corruption in Congress. What she's talking about is that they all agree on corruption. We agreed on having the financial services screw over people on their credit cards. She signed off to have 35% interest rates. She's the one who's the enemy of the worker. She's the one there for every war possible. She's the one that keeps health care away from people. The extremists are those people, and she, again, has to project that onto other people. And then she's the one who invented Russiagate, right? So Russiagate was 100% hoax. That was proven by Mueller and then by the Durham report. It was they're the ones who financed Russian disinformation, which is what the Steele dossier was. Where did Christopher Steele get that information? He got it from his contacts inside the Kremlin. They put it in the Steele report. That's 100% Russian disinformation. Nobody talks about it. They lied that they funded it for a whole year. They lied to the FBI. They never have to go to jail for it because they're lying at the behest of the establishment. And they got to get rid of Donald Trump because Donald Trump wouldn't do the interventions they wanted. He ran on pulling us out of the Middle East. They can't have that. He said there was a deep state, and he gave away our foreign policy. So that's what this is all about. Of course, the Republicans and the Democrats, they agree on all the important things to screw over regular people and keep the military-industrial complex going because they work for their donors. That's another version of her deplorable speech. And how did that work for her? Donald Trump beat you an election after you called half the country deplorables, and she's trying to do that again.
So I have a question for you guys. We have Hillary Clinton here saying that there needs to be deprogramming, what people are referring to as essentially re-education. The former president has been indicted. I think he's facing 91 charges. It's going to put him in jail for hundreds of years if he's convicted. They're trying to seize his assets and his property and destroy him. The Capitol Police are setting up offices around the country. They've raided the homes of even innocent people on accident. We're seeing the FBI now label Trump's followers as extremists to be targeted. And my question is, when you see these things happening, plus the indictment of lawyers for the former president, the sanctioning, I don't know how many people know this, many of the lawyers that were hired by Donald Trump and his inner circle in 2020 to argue on his behalf over the 2020 election, they've been sanctioned to the tunes of hundreds of thousands of dollars for simply providing a constitutionally, in my opinion, required legal service. What comes next? They're calling Trump supporters, Trump's followers, terrorists and extremists. She's going on TV saying they're a cult that must be reprogrammed. They're arresting lawyers. Mike Cernovich tweeted recently, perhaps hyperbolically, perhaps a little bit aggressive, that in the coming year, if Biden wins, something to the effect of he will be framed by the regime for a crime that they will use just to justify killing him. And then you had, of course, Scott Adams several years ago said it's very likely that the next year you will be dead. Well, we're all still alive. But some people didn't make it. Crime is getting bad. And so I'm wondering if Scott Adams and Mike Cernovich are seeing something legitimate. Maybe their statements are a little aggressive, but my view is Hillary Clinton adding to the conversation. We need to re-educate these people. The FBI report. I'm curious what you guys think happens next, considering all this.
Well, I heard there's a split inside the military in the CIA, right? So there's General Flynn, and who they've tried to make him out to be a criminal. They framed him to get him to go along. So this is what they're doing. So I hope that there's a big faction of the military or some big faction of the CIA that doesn't want to go along with what's happening. I've heard that. I don't have any direct information, but I've heard people say that I trust, but I don't know. I don't have any evidence of it.
Wait, real quick. Like everyone makes the meme about me saying Civil War, but I had not heard about the military having a potential split.
No, I'm just saying that they back Trump and they see what the game that is being played. Hey, this is exactly what they said. What Trump made Trump a fascist was that he criminalizes his political opponents. That's exactly what they're doing. Of course, just like Hillary Clinton, that's all just like what they're saying is happening in Ukraine. The exact opposite is the truth. Whatever you're hearing on the corporate news, the exact opposite is the truth. So, so I don't know. So I hope this is true. What I'm hearing, I hope the reason why Trump is running is to try to run against the CIA and this military-industrial complex. I hope that's what's happening because that's what we need to have happen. And we live in a banana republic right now. They're really doing it. It does, like I said, it doesn't matter if you're Trump. It doesn't matter if you're MAGA. It doesn't matter if you're ultra-lefty. They are also doing it to black socialists. They're also doing it to Stop Cop City. Barack Obama in 2011 signed the NDAA Section 1021, which got rid of habeas corpus. So that means that they can throw you in jail and they don't have to charge you with the crime. All they have to do is say you're a terrorist. Well, if you go out and protest, they're going to say you're an economic terrorist. Or if you protest an oil well, they're going to say you're an environmental terrorist. So all you do is say you're a terrorist, they throw you in jail, and that's that. And look what they're doing to Julian Assange, still right out in the open. And so that's why none of the journalists ever tell the truth about Ukraine. That's why they never tell the truth about what's going on, because they know what's going to happen to them if they actually put a hurt on the establishment, which is why we have horrible journalism in America, which is why shows like this are popular, shows like Tim and mine, Joe Rogan, Rusty Rockets. That's why these shows, and Tucker Carlson's killing it. Why? Because, and Tucker Carlson got fired. He didn't get fired for lying. That's he got fired because he started telling the truth about foreign policy, economic policy, and the big pharma. And as soon as he did that, he became persona non grata, and they had to get rid of him. He got fired for telling the truth, not for lying, and that's what happens. And that's what they did to Julian Assange. That's what they did to Edward Snowden. So and that's why they have such control on us on YouTube, and we have to answer to billionaires because that's who runs everything. And people think we live in a democracy. It's a joke that they think we're living in a democracy. We live in an authoritarian nightmare, and now we're in a surveillance state where we're operating on a liberty view from around the 1100s. You know, the habeas corpus was in the Magna Carta. They got rid of that. So now we're operating on a liberty view from around the 1100s, and people don't even realize it or care because people are too busy trying to make a living. And while they, instead of them helping those people, they're taking that money, sending it to the military-industrial complex via Ukraine. It's a crazy world we're living in, and I wonder when the real revolution's going to start, because the truckers let the template for that. So what the truckers did was they shut down capitalism, and they put a hurt on them, so they immediately called them white supremacists, Nazis, as they're literally funding Nazis themselves, and they are in bed with Nazis. So if somebody in America comes up with a plan on how to do that, and if it comes like from a Christian Smalls who knows how to bring left and right people together and oppose the establishment like he did on Staten Island with Amazon. So if the truckers get together with a union leader like that, and they can start making demands and hook up with like a Matt Gaetz inside of Congress, that's when a real revolution can happen. That's the only thing that's going to save this country at this point.
And Tim, can I ask you one question, Tim? Off the FBI creating the MAGA extremist category for Trump extremists, what's their criteria to find out and label you and put you in that group? Like, what's the FBI going to monitor? Like, if you have the flag on your truck, are they going to come after you? Because, Jimmy, you nailed it. On January 6th, the chief of Capitol Police, Stephen Sun, told everybody. They wouldn't let him testify. He was like, I was begging for help. They didn't give me shit. I wanted the National Guard. Just like you said, FBI, Ray Epps, everybody getting. They caused all this thing, and now they're warning us. I think because they know something is going to happen for this election. Now they're going to go after anybody that has any type of say. But I want to know, what do you think is going to be their trigger to go after you? Like what? If you just say, hey, I like Trump, they're going to monitor your ass?
Sounds like it. I refer to things like this, like I call it a Chinese finger trap problem.
Yeah.
In that the establishment is panicking over the likes of Matt Gaetz, anti-establishment podcasters and individuals. And so when none of the propaganda is working anymore, none of the media narrative is working, they go for the brute force method. But guess what? The harder you pull in a Chinese finger trap, the tighter it becomes. Mm-hmm. So when they make moves like this, I have to wonder, I'm like, are they that stupid? Because if you've got a bunch of people who are concerned the government's spying on them and persecuting them, and then you publicly announce, like, actually, we're totally doing that.
Yeah.
The only thing it results in is more destabilization. I'm not, looking at what comes next, I don't think people often look to tropes in history, TVs, and movies, and that's wrong. They make assumptions. We hear, Alex Jones yell, 1776 will happen again.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that wasn't the start of the American Revolution. The American Revolution, revolutionary period started in 1764. It was 11 years before the first shot was fired. 11 years. And you know what the Founding Fathers were doing for those 11 years? They were pamphleting. They were going around and they're kind of doing what we're doing. They were saying freedom, liberty, the oppression is wrong. The Founding Fathers did not want to go to war. They kept writing strongly worded letters to the crown being like, we deserve representation. And then what happened was, I'll give you a super simplified version of it. It was the Tea Act. I'm probably getting the name wrong. The Crown was trying to subsidize the East India Trading Company, which was facing dire straits. So they said, we're going to make it easier for them to sell tea in the colonies and around the world, which directly competes with the tea from the colonists, which is going to hurt their ability to make money. So the colonists got mad. They throw the tea in the bay, and they're like, screw your tea, you can't do this. The Crown then says, you got to pay back all the money for that damaged tea. Massachusetts then says, screw you. The Crown then says, we're sending in regulars to maintain order in the Massachusetts colony because y'all are acting a fool. A bunch of farmers outside of the city proper in the more rural area said, you have no authority over us. The regulars were then instructed to go take the guns away from these men. And I think it was only a small group of individuals at Lexington and Concord. When the regulars came and said, you're going to give us all of your guns, they said, no, we're not. No one knows exactly who shot first. I think, based on what I read, it was probably an American colonist who opened fire, shooting a regular. And that was the shot heard round the world, not literally, but that's the moment they call it the shot heard round the world, which started the American Revolution 1 year before the Declaration of Independence. What I see happening now in Philadelphia, in California, absolute destabilization. When you got 100 people running through the streets, smashing windows, stealing products, and looting for no reason, just because these flash mobs keep happening. What's starting to happen is that these individuals view the state and law enforcement as a joke. The way I explain it to people, imagine if a bunch of clowns, literal clowns with big poofy red hair and clown noses walked up to your door, banged, and showed you a clown portrait and said, this clown portrait gives us the right to enter your property and search everything. You'd laugh, right?
Yep.
You'd say, what is this, a clown? Now, when we see law enforcement with a warrant, we are socialized to be like, this is the norm and these are the rules and we have to obey them. But when you see people ransacking businesses, it's because in their mind, when they see a cop, they see a clown. They do not see that person as someone with authority over them at all. When this destabilization starts happening, it'll happen, and it's happening all over the place with rioting. What you're seeing is that kids growing up today, these younger kids, they're teenagers, they're young adults, do not view the United States government in any capacity as having authority over their lives. What happens then? In New York, when the riots got crazy, what did the city government do? They do what governments always do. They circle the wagons around themselves and they leave you high and dry.
Yep.
When these things start happening, you get men and militias forming, which is what you see in the likes of Lexington and Concord. What I see happening next is a potentiality. I don't know for sure. If you look at what happened with the Bundy Ranch incident now almost 10 years ago, when the federal government starts circling the wagons around itself over the conflict and the crisis, determining that Trump's voters are all extremists and terrorists, eventually law enforcement shows up to a small town for some reason or another, and some local guys who are in their 30s with body armor and guns say, we don't recognize your authority, we don't care for your authority, you don't protect us, we don't pay you, you have no authority here. In fact, what ends up starts happening is a local person will declare themselves a sheriff, they'll vote on it, and then they'll say, we're the authority here, not you. Now you have governments at odds with each other. Civil war is not, people make this mistake. They think it's that there's going to be a big faction of states. They stamp a paper and say, we hereby declare civil war. And that's not what's going to happen. What's going to happen is that as the government loses control because people no longer view them as the monopoly on violence, factions start popping up. Then the government circles the wagons around themselves. And then you have multiple factions in various parts of the country. We've already seen this start with things like Chaz, Chop, or otherwise. Yep. Even Stop Cop City are people saying we don't recognize the authority of the government. If this persists and the government makes the problem worse by calling Trump supporters terrorists, they are outright telling you, you are not protected by us, you are not a part of us, but we will take your money and use it against you. This kind of shit freaks me out.
So and my theory is that this whole game by the establishment, the oligarchy through their corporate media, is to keep us distracted and hating our neighbor and blaming our neighbor and being afraid. We got to be afraid of white supremacy. We got to get, after we elected a black American president twice in a row, all of a sudden racism is going crazy. We got to worry about white supremacy all of a sudden. And your neighbor's a white supremacist, and your neighbor's a QAnon, and your neighbor's this, and they want us to be hating each other and fear each other, because if we don't, we'll join together and we'll see the game that's actually being played on us. And that will happen, what he just described, a lot sooner, when we don't see legitimacy of the government governing us, because they're governing for the donor class and not for us. And so that's why they got to keep us distracted, hating. That's why they got to have Hillary Clinton on CNN saying we got to deprogram MAGA. They're the real threat. The real threat, as we all know, is the government and corporate America. That's the real threat.
and you know what I think I see happening is, when you get, we've already seen videos since the 2020 riots where there's one video where a car's driving by and you see like 3 guys with AR-15s and body armor at the end of their block. And these are probably just local dudes who knew each other who said, guys, these riots are bad. Let's go stand, watch, and make sure nobody comes onto our street and screws with our friends and family. That's how it begins. Eventually, they're a neighborhood watch, or they have a name. They need a way to recognize each other. Now there's too many members, and they're like, well, let's give ourselves, like a code so that we know who's helping protect the neighborhood. They're going to have other neighbors, the divide you're talking about, Jimmy, where you might have like some guys who are Black Lives Matter activists, but then what's going to happen is the BLM guys in their neighborhood will be like, look, all we want to do is make sure our kids are okay and nobody's coming and screwing with us and we don't trust the police. And then these other guys are going to be like, yeah, they called us terrorists. We don't like them either.
Yeah.
And that's when you get multiple factions and they're all pointing at the government. Let me put it this way. If BLM is saying police are bad, abolish the police, they oppress us, and now the feds are going after Trump supporters as terrorists, you're very, very close to BLM and Trump supporters being like, I'll do me, you do you, let's not fight each other, but those people hate us.
Yeah.
And how do you deprogram these people? Because you said a unique word over there. You said, this is also called re-education. I hate to break it to you, Hillary Clinton. You're not going to convince these guys to vote for you. I don't know what reprogramming and deprogramming even looks like for something like that, but these are some of the same people that would have voted gladly for Bernie Sanders in 2016.
If he wasn't cheating.
They do not want the establishment, the status quo, the business as usual, typical talking head politician in there. So how do they deprogram these people? It's never going to happen.
I think the opposite's happening. I think in 2020, before 2019, it's a 2020 cycle. A lot of the people that I talk to when you quote unquote touch grass, you go out to the real world, right? You get off the internet. They were saying things like, I'm in an Uber and the guy's just like, I'm sick of Trump. I'm sick of the division. If we vote for Biden, it goes away. And I'm telling them like, Trump's not the cause of this. He's a symptom of it. And so what I'm seeing now, and it's a story that I've been telling, I was hanging out at poker tables in Charlestown, West Virginia. And you get some people, it's a mixed area actually in the Eastern Panhandle. So I get one guy recognizes me and says, you think Trump's going to win, blah, blah, blah. And I said, they might take his name off the ballot in one state. And then who knows what happens. One guy chimes in and goes, I hate Trump, but man, this stuff's freaking me out. They shouldn't be doing this. And so what I'm hearing now, and I've heard this a couple times, so it's very anecdotal, is that typically the people who would say Trump's the cause of the problem are now realizing Trump's not the president anymore, and they're not stopping. And the persecution, the political persecution and the weaponization of government is starting to terrify the people who are begging to be left alone. The people who are begging to be left alone, I don't think will ever take up arms and go fight or whatever, but they'll vote, and they won't vote for Democrats. I'm not saying they'll vote for Trump either. But now I think they're scared, and they're starting to realize that vote for Biden didn't end the culture war. It made it worse.
So if you like this clip and you want to watch another one, click right here. And if you want to watch the entire podcast, click right here.